Welcome to CrocodileMTG. Hello everyone and welcome. My name is Jordan with CrocodileMTG, here bringing you another Magic the Gathering video. Today we are playing Esper Control in Standard. I am currently 2-0. This is match number 3. And we are going to keep this hand. This is a very keepable hand. We're going to see what our opponent is playing as they're on the play. And they start with a Watery Grave tapped. So we're going to start with a Hollowed Fountain tapped. And we'll pass the turn back. We'll see if our opponent thought erasers us. They may here. And they do. So we'll see what our opponent takes here. They could take the Search for Azcanta. They could take our own Thought Eraser. And depending on what they're on, they might take the Mortify. So we'll see here. Our hand is pretty loaded with some good cards. So next turn, we're probably just going to play out this Hollowed Fountain. Alright, so they do take the Search for Azcanta here, which means we're going to Thought Eraser back. So we're actually going to play this Godless Shrine. And here we go. See what our opponent's on. So now we're both down the 5 cards. We're going to take our opponent's Search for Azcanta as well. So we're going to put that Watery Grave probably on top, I'd imagine. I think we just want to hit as many land drops as we can here. I think I actually want to play it untapped. So our opponent knows our hand now, other than the Absorb. I guess what I could have done too is taken the Kaya's Wrath and then Mortified the other one, but I think just having Mortify in our hand is decent. So I'll pass the turn back. We drew another Kaya's Wrath, which isn't great. I think this matchup definitely comes down to Teferis, I feel like. So they played out their Swamp. Now we don't know what's in our opponent's hand other than this one Kaya's Wrath. So if our opponent plays a Teferi, we may just want to Contempt it. That's probably wrong. We probably want to Absorb it. I think we'll Absorb here. Surprised our opponent did that. Yeah, they probably have a Contempt in hand. So they don't know 2 of our cards currently. And we've hit a land drop every turn, which is good for us, I think. Alright, and now we have the Teferi, but we don't have the Absorb backup. So I think I just passed the turn back. If our opponent Teferis and then we Vraska's Contempt it and they have backup for it, then... Alright, now I'm half tempted to run this Teferi out. I guess maybe we try it. If our opponent leads with their own Teferi, that kind of... Our Teferi sticks, so that is surprising for us. So they probably have Contempt here, which is fine. We get an extra card out of it. It's kind of a 2-for-1. Alright, so we have our own Contempt for their Teferi, if they play one. So We know one of their cards is Kaya's Wrath, which is just dead. So, all right, now I probably want to hold this Teferi. And then Chemister's Insight. Yeah, I probably just want a Chemister's Insight, possibly double Chemister's Insight. Next turn, discarding probably is Kaya's Wrath. So we'll see what our opponent does here. Alright, end of turn, we're gonna Chemister's Insight. Draw all the cards. So we have 7 in hand. We're probably using a couple of these cards next turn, so I'll probably just... We're at our opponent's end step, so I really don't think it's that dangerous, the spot we're in. So I'm going to start with Thought Erasering our opponent. We'll see if they have a counter spell here. Now the question is, do we want to counter back? I guess probably not. Sorry guys, I got quiet there because I was debating because it was a legitimate question. We want to wait till next turn to play out this Teferi. I'm a little surprised our opponent didn't fight over the draw spell, to be honest. So I'm going to attempt to play out this Teferi now. Alright, so our Teferi sticks, so we're going to draw a card here. We drew a Watery Grave. Alright, so it looks like our Teferi is sticking, so I'm interested to see what our opponent has to kind of combat this. They didn't have a counterspell. They don't have a Vraska's Contempt, from what I know. Alright, so they have their own Teferi, which I'm going to absorb. And if they have a counterspell back, which it doesn't look like they do, our opponent may have actually tapped wrong too, because they tapped out completely here. Alright, so I just want to keep grinding with this Teferi. I'm hoping to find another draw spell here soon. So just so everyone knows, Teferi was errated, so you can untap up to target lands. So our opponent looks like they're just drawing lands here. So now we have the negate, which is absolutely fantastic. We're just gonna keep ticking up here. Our opponent, if they have a I was going to say, if they have a removal spell for this Teferi, we drew the negate at the beginning of the turn, which might have been a bad misplay from our opponent. Alright, so we're just going to untap our land here. And we're probably going to discard this Kaya's Wrath. We just have so much spot removal. Sure, you can play that. I'm probably just going to mortify it here. It's better to be safe than sorry. Alright, so we're going to mortify that. And we'll untap. Play our land, draw a card. See if our opponent just kind of concedes here. It's getting kind of to the point where I'm just so far ahead. I don't know if our opponent has the removal spell for Teferi and they're just kind of waiting to try and have a counter spell backup. I really don't know. see what our opponent does here. Alright, so our opponent's just passing back, it looks like. And we drew another Teferi. So part of me just wants to make an emblem this turn and then play out this other Teferi. We have the negate back up. And we know one of our opponent's cards in their hand is just a dead Kaya's Wrath. So we'll see here if this Teferi sticks. And it does, so we'll draw another card. We're gonna exile, I guess start going after their white sources first. And once our opponent's down on cards, we're gonna start hitting with this Warden. Alright, so we're going to Contempt. We're going to negate the Contempt. And we'll see what our opponent does here. They might have another counter spell. Alright, so they're going to destroy that, which is fine. Alright, start taking their... Alright, the game ended here, so we win game number 1. So against the mirror match, I'm assuming this is where we bring in Eldest Reborn. I think this is the Thief of Sanity matchup. We probably bring in the Dresses. And what else? We definitely cut these Kaya Wraths. Moment of, not Moment of Craving. We probably cut the Moment of Cravings also, but I was looking at Cry when I said that. And we're on the draw, so I think we want to keep in this cast down against our opponent's card. Do we want Moment of Craving? Like, our opponent has Thief of Sanities in their deck. I'm assuming. I mean, most sideboards is pretty typical to see. Maybe we want a Moment of Cravings and we cut a Vraska's Contempt. I could see cutting this Warden too. Yeah, maybe Warden's better now that I could see Warden being good now that you know, our opponent doesn't have these Kaya Wraths and they're kind of limited. If they're sideboarding kind of the same way we're thinking, I mean, they have Mortify still. I don't know, do we... I guess we probably cut Moment of Craving. We can leave that in as our removal spell and probably the cast down. We also have Mortifies and Contempts, so I think we're going to run this back. Not run this back, but run this. So we cut Moment of Cravings, we cut Contempt. I think this hand would be great if we had some black mana. We're missing some swamps. So, I mean, we're on the draw. This hand's great if we didn't, but I think we have to mulligan here. Alright, this hand's better. And that's on top, so that's good. So our hand is pretty okay. And we'll see what our opponent does. They're probably starting with this Thought Eraser. And we'll see what they try and take here. I'm assuming it's just the Thief of Sanity. If they don't have any way to deal with it, Alright, they took our own Thought Eraser. Alright, Search off the top is pretty good. I could see our opponent taking a turn off to mortify this. But if they have their Thief of Sanity, I could see that as well. Alright, so they have their Thief of Sanity. Hopefully we find a land. Then hopefully these Thief of Sanities just run into each other. If not, I might just... It's so hard when our opponent has the Thief of Sanity and... Alright, our opponent is slow rolling us, not letting us look at the top of our library. Alright, we're going to put that on top. We're going to play our own Thief of Sanity. And we're going to pray he doesn't have the Mortify. If our opponent gets in with their Thief of Sanity, it's just rough for us. Alright, it looks like... Okay. Ooh, they don't. Is our opponent going to just run them into each other? So if we top deck a removal spell here... No. I'm going to leave that on top. I guess I'll make our opponent trade their Thief of Sanity. Unless our opponent just doesn't block. Alright. So we trade the Thief. So that's one pressure off our back a little bit. And now we have the negate. So as long as they don't have another Thief of Sanity, we might be okay. Alright, so our opponent passes back to us. I'm surprised our opponent didn't attack with their Thief of Sanity. If we would have drawn something there, they removed theirs, we would have just been so far ahead. Thief of Sanity is just such a lethal card. If you're able to protect it and just keep stealing your opponent's things, it's just so good. I think I'm going to put that in our hand. We'll pass back. So now we have negate, absorb. Hopefully it's good enough to slow our opponent down quite a bit. So our opponent at some point put Disdainful Stroke in their graveyard. Alright, so we'll see what our opponent does here. They just passed the turn back. Well, we want lands, we want spells. That absorb can probably go into the graveyard. There we go. I'm going to pay 2 for this. 1 if we get in a counter war, which won't matter because it's not a blue source. I want to attempt to precision at the end of their turn, so we'll see. So our opponent pays the 2. Man, I really wish we had this another blue source. Because if we had the absorb and the negate, alright, so we're gonna precision here. We'll see if our opponent counters this. This is quite a bit of card advantage. I wouldn't be surprised if they did. That being said, though, they know I have the Teferi in hand, and they might have to keep up removal for that. Our opponent debating this pretty long. Drawing 3 cards is a big deal, especially at instant speed. It's just so much card advantage, and especially right now our opponent has the upper hand because we have the mulligan, and they have currently 5 cards in hand. So there is probably incentive to counter this, but I think our opponent's worried that next turn I'm just going to jam this to Fairy. If they had removal for both, I don't think they'd be thinking about this so hard. But the fact that this is a end of turn draw 3 cards on our opponent's turn, I think that just puts us so far ahead. Plus, if we find another blue source, then we have absorb and negate, and I think that just gives us such a huge advantage on what we can do as far as passing turns back and forth. Alright, so our opponent's going to actually precision in response here. So they're drawing 3 in response to our drawing 3. And now we just kind of... I think we just duress them and see what they have. And then Teferi and keep this negate back up. I think that was a tough call from our opponent, and I think that may have put us way ahead, being the first to untap from this. Alright, so I don't think we need that hollowed fountain right now. Alright, so I'm going to start with duressing our opponent. Alright, our opponent has Thief of Sanity, Karn, Teferi, Contempt, Absorb. Okay, quite a hand from our opponent here. Is it just this Teferi? It's probably just one of these Teferis. I think Teferi is one of the strongest cards right now in Standard, and I think being able to just cut him down on Teferis is just absolutely amazing. So we're going to play our own Teferi. We're going to tick this up. We're going to untap Watery Grave, Hollowed Fountain, and we're going to have this negate back up. And I just think our opponent's not going to have the mana. They have to draw a negate here. I guess that's the only thing that saves them. Because they can't flip the search this turn. I guess they can. If they contempt first and put a card in grave. So they have to attempt to contempt our Teferi, put a card in grave, and then... This isn't going to work, though. So I'm going to negate that. Sure, they get to flip their search Frescanta, but all they're going to do is play Thief of Sanity. Am I wrong? And then we have Absorb and Duress, and we can just take down our opponent's cards. I don't think... So we have 7 cards in grave. I want to put this in the graveyard and I want to flip the search Frescanta. I think I'm just going to eat this Thief of Sanity from our opponent for the turn. Yeah, our opponent drew another Absorb. So I think here I want to just take the other Teferi, and now we have... Do we have Absorb? Yeah, we have Absorb and negate backup. And just being so far ahead on this board, I don't think our opponent's going to be able to combat back. If they don't find a removal to this... Alright, so we're going to negate here. And now we've taken care of 3 of our opponent's planeswalkers. And we have our search for his Kanta. So we drew Thief of Sanity, which is huge. So our opponent's hand is just a Lonely Absorb. We took care of 2 Thief of Sanity. I guess they have a Thief of Sanity second from top. Alright, now I can actually take this Absorb if I want from our opponent. Any order. So now I want to actually play that on tap because I'm just going to take this Absorb from our opponent. And now our opponent, empty-handed, I'm going to play out this Thief of Sanity with Absorb backup. And I think it's just going to be too much for our opponent unless they find a removal spell. Alright, and that's the game. Thank you so much for watching. Please go hit that like and subscribe button if you enjoyed today's video.